Greetings and salutations, fellow denizens of the zone. It is I, Eric J. Chucky, joined as always by the boy.
Hey!
This is the Two Nerds Podcast, and today, before we get into what we have to get into, I would like to remind you that we do this for free, mostly because we enjoy it. But I am a hardworking creative. You could support me via Patreon. You could buy my books. I have a new one. Yeah, I have a new one coming out soon. Unlike a lot of the other podcasts, we're recording this in a timely fashion. So I know it's not out yet. You can also hit the like button if you don't have money. Leave a comment. That also really helps in tandem with the like button. Subscribe if you haven't already. This pay-per-view is big enough. We might get some outside people. We talk about wrestling and video games and nerd shit once a week. And we do a Journey of Wrestling Simulator thing also once a week. So maybe check that out. I also stream on Twitch. That's fun. Let's roll on.
Okay, Rob is good. So,
God, I completely forgot how good Rob is.
Well, we are covering AEW's 2021 edition of All Out. You may notice something, if you are someone who's listened to the podcast for a while, about this particular wrestling pay-per-view, in contrast to all of the other ones we've covered, minus a couple indie shows we covered a few years ago.
I say it all the time on Twitch when people ask, and I've said it before on previous podcasts, and you have as well. It's hard to switch from WWE to AEW. It is hard to go back to watching weekly wrestling. I'm not going to make a joke about it because the joke is basically dead at this point. We tuned in to Rampage to see CM Punk return. Now, you and I both have a complicated history being fans of Phil.
You can actually go back to listen to previous podcasts to hear some of that complicated history in action. We were both huge fans of his when he was in the WWE. He was one of both of our favorite wrestlers of all time. The circumstances regarding his exit from that company and subsequent interpersonal issues with other talent soured us on him for a long time. But that was many years ago at this point.
All three of us have grown as people.
Yes, and we both wanted to give him an honest shot. He's coming back to wrestling. We were both fairly excited, wanted to see if we could put the past aside, as it were, and use this as a great jumping in point to do something we had both been basically saying, well, I really need to do this for a long time, which is try and give AEW a more honest shot.
Yeah, it's not something, wrestling in general is not something you can just shotgun. Catching up was never really an option, but getting into the swing of watching every week was a lot easier when it was as exciting as everything that's happened since Punk came back has been.
And so, this is going to be a podcast about All Out, because we want to talk about the show itself, but I think it would behoove us to also talk about our experience with AEW so far, getting back into watching weekly wrestling, because we have been since CM Punk debuted. It's been a couple weeks now. And also the product itself, the weekly shows they put on, that sort of thing, because a lot of it stands in really, really positive contrast to our previous wrestling experience.
Well, and that's like a way to put it too, because getting into AEW originally was a little difficult, because I think we were both still in the middle of wrestling burnout.
We were both still in the middle of wrestling burnout. It was a bit more of a pain in the ass to watch their show. It has become much less of a pain in the ass, and we're no longer burnt out on pro wrestling.
I've been really thirsty for some good wrestling, and the last few WWE pay-per-views, although they scratched the itch a little bit, like, it lingered.
They were fine sports entertainment.
Yeah. But with something like this, like, you know, but both Rampage, where he debuted, and All Out, I just wanted to be there. I wanted to be able to, in the future, nod at the wrestling listicle and go, yeah, I watched that.
I watched that. I saw when the music hit for the first time in 7 years. I saw the first time he laced up boots and said, it's clobbering time, and then clobbered a motherfucker. Despite some sour feelings, which Phil quickly, to his credit, did everything that both of us ever wanted from him to disabuse those, if any remained. CM Punk really delivered in getting us back into watching weekly wrestling again, and in getting us into this just objectively superior product.
Yeah. I don't want to dwell too long on my feelings on weekly AEW, just because we're here to talk about the pay-per-view, and I'm sure a lot of long-time AEW fans are like, yes, duh. But for those of you who haven't made the switch yet, I want to say a few things. One, and I believe you agree with me on this, my God, is it wonderful to hear commentators who are enjoying what they're doing,
who don't have a 90 million year old goblinoid screaming in their ear at all times.
Mark Henry is a national treasure, and I hope we keep him forever. The number of times on commentary, all the other commentators are doing the commentator thing, and then Mark Henry makes an astute, well-worded observation or witticism that blows my mind at the back of my skull.
JR is he's the best to ever lace up boots in this particular profession.
He's in amazing form, too. Like, people on the internet like to give him shit when he, says stuff wrong. He's always said stuff wrong.
Yeah, that's never not been a case.
No.
Like, that's part of the charm. I'm gonna need you to get over it. But, speaking to people, mostly, and this is mostly why I wanted to do it, for anyone who does listen to our podcast who still hasn't given AEW an honest shot, watch the weekly shows. They're not that long. One of them's only a damn hour.
Yeah.
That's a third of one Raw. And they're good. They focus on all of the best aspects of wrestling, and they clearly just want to tell good stories and put on good pro wrestling, and it really shines through.
This is a show that's trying to be what you remember of wrestling from the 90s. And I don't mean in like a throwback sense, but more like the oeuvre. It's about pro wrestling and the pro wrestling product, not the sensationalist stuff that the WWE did. I mean, I wouldn't point to the Attitude Era as a good measure of this. I would say pre-NWO WCW or pre-Attitude Era WWF. It's hearkening back to when telling a wrestling story was good enough on its own.
And it benefits greatly thereby. But I do want to talk about the pay-per-view mostly, much like you. I just wanted to get that out of the way at the beginning. I'm having a great time watching weekly wrestling, which hasn't been true since at least 2010. So...
That sounds accurate, yeah.
Before
we started doing this podcast, honestly.
Yeah, this is absolutely a great change.
Yeah.
I feel young again.
It just feels nice to fucking enjoy something again. Not enjoy with caveats.
Not like, well, I mean, as the joke is around the Two Nerds household, it's just a little airborne. It's still good. It's still good. No, this is just good.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Yeah. I didn't watch the pre-show. I believe you were around for it, but I don't think you were paying any attention.
I caught the very tail end of the last match. We had a very busy day.
Yeah.
And sadly, AEW does actual real pay-per-views, so you kind of got to be there.
But we did start off with Eddie Kingston versus Miro. As someone who was a fan of the man who used to be known as Rusev, I'm glad that AEW has given this guy the TNT Championship, an undefeated streak, a microphone.
A better gimmick. A good gimmick at all.
It's neat. Like, I don't know that this would be my favorite gimmick, but he's running with it, and I like that he's full of shit. And, like, he's a great heel.
He's like... whereas this, far and away, is my favorite gimmick this particular talent has ever done. And it's something I would write. So, of course, I love it. And he does excellent work in it. He's clearly having a great fucking time being the bad guy, but, like, not a goober. That's really nice.
Yeah. To be a serious competitor. Also, Eddie Kingston. Y'all know I'm a Chikara guy from way back.
Being the man who called Dragon did get him a lot of points for me.
And often was Dragon.
But he dresses like a 40-year-old man cosplaying someone who was a teenager in the mid-2000s. He talks like that also. And his gimmick is just a little insufferable.
I've never actually been a fan of Eddie Kingston, but, like, respect.
He's a good wrestler.
Oh, shit, yeah.
He's a great wrestler. That gimmick is...
That's just who he is, man.
Insufferable, man.
It is just who he is.
Then he is insufferable.
Yeah, like I said.
But...
Still, fantastic match for both guys.
Yeah, great match, great talent. I love the Mad King as a wrestling nickname. Fucking excellent work. I wish you did more with that than what you're doing. But the match was great. I love Miro. Miro won. Yay.
Yeah, pretty much. And it goes without saying, I think, but I will reiterate it now, because who knows, we might end up being sort of, what's the word I'm looking for, brief on words for a lot of these matches. They're all very good.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff we talk about in WWE pay-per-views, of which we'd covered many, is if the match was good, we just sort of say the match was good because, well, I'm not just going to sit here and recite spots to you. Go watch the match.
Yeah. It's a little harder for you to go watch the show.
Yeah, more expensive than a WWE pay-per-view.
And I don't know how you can just pull that up. Maybe they do DVDs, I'm not sure. But,
I mean, maybe it's still available for streaming.
Maybe, who knows. But, like, in WWE, the good matches were the standouts, whereas this is just always good wrestling.
Yeah, this is just good wrestling. All the wrestling is good.
And we have a lot of time to talk about, like, weird gimmick moments and shit because they happen, whereas, like, the number of recaps and video packages and backstage segments during this show were at the absolute fucking minimum.
There were some, but they were what was necessary to tell the tale and no more.
Yeah, your piss break match was a very required piss break match because there wasn't time to just fuck off.
All the talent had plenty of time to work. The pre-show match was the second shortest match on the card, the other one being the piss break match, which was literally 3 minutes long. But everyone else had time to work, had time to put on a good match with a good story. This had a very solid, technical, story throughout. The talent focused on actual good ring psychology. Again, I might not like his gimmick, or I guess him as a person, but I'm sure he's a pleasant enough individual. I'm mostly memeing. But
well, there's a reason we're introverts who, do a podcast and not like people who are in a bar.
Yeah. But
Eddie Kingston seems like he's been to a bar.
But it's just good, solid wrestling throughout, and that will be true henceforth, with one notable exception, which is almost comical by its exception.
So our next match was Satoshi Kojima versus Jon Moxley. I don't know a lot about New Japan in general, but as I understand it, basically what Mox has been doing is, have you heard of New Japan? This is one of their wrestlers. And I'm excited.
He's really cool and good at wrestling.
Yeah, I'm excited to see that continue with, good God, I've forgotten his name and it's not written here. The guy who came out after the match. But the match itself, could you take that while I Google something real quick?
So one of the things I enjoy about this is I don't know much about New Japan. I know maybe like a smidgen more than White, mostly because I Google stuff occasionally. Minoru Suzuki.
Yeah, and I didn't Google anything just now. He just thought of it with his brain.
Sure. I knew Minoru, but
yeah, I know the name.
To my eternal shame, because it's the name of an anime character. But I didn't remember the last one. I didn't want to guess and end up racist. But this one of the things I love about this match is, one, it was a good match. It was pretty.
It was a club. Like this was a beating.
This was a pretty as the term goes, a slobber knocker.
Yeah, definitely.
But one of the things I love is they went very New Japan with the build. I love the audience. I love the audience full of complete fucking smarks who at one point when Kojima was doing well started fucking clapping.
Just sitting there
politely clapping. I love that the announcers and the match itself was partially done to spotlight this talent from New Japan and how cool New Japan is, which is what the forbidden door, as it were, doing those cross promotional stuff is meant to do.
Yeah.
But the announcers went to great lengths to explain Satoshi Kojima, what he's famous for, why he's cool, why you should be excited to be watching him wrestle, what he's doing, because you probably don't know, because you've probably never seen him wrestle before if you're a complete normie like me.
Which mostly is Excalibur. Excalibur, the man talking a mile a minute and supporting that entire commentary while JR and Tony Schiavone just sort of chat. talk about things they like. I'm not bagging on either of them. I'm so glad to see Schiavone. The best he's ever been. Period.
I never got into WCW much, and I love Tony Schiavone. So it's not nostalgia, folks. It's just he's really fucking good at his job.
But like this is like sort of like the old guys in the Muppets, Statler, Waldorf, being held up by Excalibur.
And Excalibur's doing a hell of a job. This match didn't overstay its welcome.
No.
It was about as long as I wanted it to be.
Yeah.
And again, really great wrestling. Glad Mox looks fucking amazing, by the way. This is something that I noticed. This is actually a story I wanted to tell. It is about the weekly show, because obviously I've seen Moxley come out in AEW since I started watching before the pay-per-view. About how many notes into Wild Thing, specifically the Wild Thing from Major League, did I call? Is that Wild Thing from Major League?
I want to say it was less than a dozen.
Yeah. Like, not just the song, but it was specifically the one Charlie Sheen came out to. And I love about John Good that he was as excited to be coming out to that song as I was excited to see him come out to that song.
Yeah.
It's just perfect for his character. I love it.
So after the match, after Moxley beat Satoshi Kojima, Minoru Suzuki came out and they had a little bit of a punch-up, and he's going to be facing him next. So that's something to look forward to. I'm looking forward to it.
Minoru looks, I mean, like you can just look at the dude and go, oh, okay, so that man murders people.
Yeah.
That's his gimmick, is that he's a murderer.
Yeah. Next up, we had a AEW Women's World Championship match. Dr. Britt Baker, DMD, the champion, against Chris Statlander, the alien.
I love Chris Statlander. Chris Statlander is amazing. Chris Statlander deserves all the awards. That gimmick is great.
The nose boops and everything. This was some really fun fucking
work.
wrestling. Yeah.
This was a great match.
Yeah.
You're going to hear that a lot. I'm sorry it's going to get repetitive, but it keeps being true.
I really appreciated Britt Baker calling out, doing a callback to when Adam Cole, her beau, had his last match in NXT.
And did one of her moves.
She did one of his.
Which was very cool and foreshadowing. But Britt Baker, went over ultimately, which I think is a fine thing to do.
Sure, she's very popular.
This didn't seem like the most personal feud. Keeping the championship on a well-established, popular heel champion so faces can chase forward is generally a good call. I want to take a moment to talk about Orange Cassidy, who had a very rare moment of investment and passion in this match, which was sold all the more by his usual lack of it. Orange Cassidy is something I wanted to mention, even though he's not on this card, for reasons that will become clear in a moment. I didn't grow up with indie wrestling. And so there are certain things that independent wrestling does that me, I believe the term is E-drone on the internet, someone who's mostly watching WWE, finds troubling to their suspension of disbelief at certain points, even though I do love them and they look super cool. Orange Cassidy can be that for some people, and I don't understand why.
Yeah.
There are things that I do understand that will come up momentarily, but Orange Cassidy and his lazy guy gimmick, that's clearly ring psychology. That's clearly intended to be ring psychology. You should be able to get that.
I love Cassidy. He's one of my favorite guys in AEW right now, and this is a fed that includes Billy Gunn and Gold Dust.
Yeah, that's high praise coming from you.
Chris Statlander as well, and I thought she was really great in this match. I'm so glad she's back. I do want to mention as well here, I love that AEW keeps track of their win-loss records. I find that adds a layer of, risk and stakes to a match that might not otherwise have one. So this match, not only is Chris Statlander wanting to take out Britt Baker, wanting to win the Women's Championship, but she has been undefeated so far this year.
And so, they reset those yearly, I believe?
Yeah, they have a season.
That's actually, I like that. It also adds a layer of verisimilitude to the fiction, which is always useful in pro wrestling, which is objectively a very silly thing.
And it's nice, too, because, you don't have that looking back negatively, like, oh, this guy lost these last 3 matches, right? But he won the 21 before that.
Yeah, it helps. It also helps. It makes it easier for them to establish certain narrative through lines because they don't have to spend time explaining shit. They can just go, record is 12-2, generally very dominant, except for maybe 1 or 2 notable for X reason losses, and then you can build the match around that reason.
Well, and keeping track of it and talking about it helps you shape your story better. The WWE might tell us Randy Orton is the greatest superstar ever, he wins all his matches, but if we, the viewers, have been watching and know he doesn't...
I mean, that's a pretty bad one to pick. Randy Orton wins most of his matches.
Well, but, maybe in the build-up to The Fiend, he lost a lot. I don't fucking know. I don't actually watch weekly shit.
No,
but,
again, I haven't enjoyed it for some time, so I haven't been doing it for at least most of that time.
Right. So... As a for instance, I'm not familiar enough with the remaining WWE roster to actually pick out a person.
No, but continue with your point.
Oh no, that wasn't my point. They can sell us on that, but if we see it's not true, then it's no good. If they're not keeping track of it, why would they think to do that? Whereas now they can keep track of it and they can say things like, well, he's been on a bit of a losing streak lately, but he's been winning for a long time. Or there's a lot on the line here. He hasn't won a match yet in 2021. He needs this win.
It gives you It gives you a lot more inherent leverage for storytelling, for simple, straightforward wrestling stories.
Yeah.
And I like that.
Yes, me too. So let's get into match of the night.
I don't know. He's gonna fight me. The look in his eyes, he's gonna fight me.
I'm not gonna fight you. I'm just fascinated that you're so committed to being wrong. What was it? Was it Paul White versus QT Marshall? Was that match of the night?
But the next match is the Young Bucks versus the Lucha Brothers for the Tag Team Championships.
After that big tournament. Very cool.
Yeah, very cool tournament. I liked all of it.
I was pulling for Jurassic Express. I really was. But Lucha Brothers is also a fine... I'm cool with them too. I like them.
They're also good.
Yeah. It was a cage match. With a different kind of cage.
I like this version of the cage better.
Yeah.
I like the placement of the door better, out of the way, out of your eye line, because it's not a part of the match. I love the AEW version of the steel cage stipulation, which makes it so the whole goddamn match isn't revolved around the heels trying to scamper out of the ring like the little scamps they are, and it's actually just a blood and guts, feud ender designed to contain the violence.
It honors the original intention of the cage match.
I don't like... one of the things I've never liked about the WWE edition of the cage match is that it always is the same story. The heel is trying to escape from the cage, the face is trying to beat the heel and keep them from escaping the cage. It's always the exact same match story, and it makes it so there's a couple very pat moments that happens in it. Also, I just don't like how it makes all heels into cowards. That's a good thing for a heel to be sometimes. But the AEW version doesn't have that. The steel escaping the cage does nothing. That's where the match is happening.
Get back in the ring, dingus.
Get back in the ring, dumbass, and fight the match. This match was a hell of a show.
It was a spot fest. I will not argue that it was a spot fest. This was not your technical... Well, I mean, shit, even still, there was a lot of technical ability.
Really technically challenging wrestling
because there were so many, if I screw this up, all of us will die moves.
Yeah. Look, Dean Malenko would not have nodded sagely at this match and gone, good.
It was not psychological very much.
But this is, and the Young Bucks in general, which is why I love that they're heels now. I can do what I naturally want to do and boo them. Is a great example of the stuff indie wrestling can do that, while I think it looks really cool and awesome, is annoying to me as someone who wants wrestling to have a certain amount of internal consistency. The Young Bucks are perhaps the bellwether, the icons for flippy indie bullshit spot fest garbage wrestling. And I want you to know I am using those terms because they're the terms that most get across what I mean, not because I dislike it. I love it. It looks great. It's really cool and fun to watch. At one point, they were all standing in a circle, super kicking each other repeatedly, in like a super kick contest, to which they all were just basically adhering to that's what we're going to be doing now. I'm gonna be honest. It's very cool looking. It is poisonous to the internal consistency of pro wrestling.
Why?
Because, like, at a certain point, one, it degrades, it turns... You know what is a great example of this? Jake Roberts almost never lost if he used the DDT. The DDT now is a transitional move. Used to move from one move to another, you need to do at least a top rope double flip springboard twirling DDT to have a hope of winning a match with it, unless it is, like, your finisher. To which it is, at which point it is conferred a extra bonus layer of damage for no particular reason.
I believe the idea is that you've mastered employing the move. You are the best at the DDT.
Doing that to all wrestling moves is not good.
So, all right, I misunderstood the thrust of your statement. This is less about men standing in a circle trying to outpunch each other, and more specifically that they were using the super kick.
Or, the insert name of really iconic, cool finisher here, which they did 9 times during the match and kicked out of each and every one of them. The super kick not even managing to knock down any of them for like 2 whole rotations. Really cool looking. Really awesome. Probably not. Probably don't do that.
I mean, like, it swings and roundabouts, right? Like, I feel divided, because there was once a point where I 100% would have agreed with you. And I do also see what you're saying, and I respect it. But I guess, in AEW, no one's using the super kick, and no one's going to. Unless, like, 2 guys super kick you at once, or, something. You have chosen not to protect this move. Whereas the DDT, specifically a little more, was protected, on this pay-per-view at least, if not in AEW in general. We saw it used twice, and a spinny, flippy version of it.
Yeah, Eddie Kingston and John Moxley both particularly wanted to use it to great effect.
Yeah.
But
I understand also where it's coming from, where something that used to be sacrosanct is now common.
Well, it harms your ability to, 1, it harms the internal consistency of the narrative, and 2, it harms your ability to tell a match story. Because if if in fiction, there's already a bunch of tropes that are embedded from our cultural knowledge, right? So if I use a bunch of these tropes on a sword, I make it very clearly special. I give it a look that's different from the other swords you see. I make it perhaps glow. That means that sword should, by our culture, there's no inherent meaning to any of that stuff, but it means that we all can vaguely understand without being told that's special and probably powerful. Certain finishing moves, most finishing moves that were mostly only used for finishing moves by wrestlers for a long time, have that same sort of thing about them. And some, by their very nature, look incredibly damaging and cool. For instance, if I see this glowing sword and someone gets hit by the glowing sword, I should expect them to be rather severely damaged by that. Then having them not be damaged by that is a great way to show that they're very tough.
Well, and perhaps that's also part of the equation here, and perhaps we should pay a little more attention during the weekly shows. This is a pay-per-view match between 2 of, as it stands, the toughest teams in AEW. And everything is on the line, so like their heart meter is fuller, and thus counts toward their HP. At
pay-per-views, I'm usually much more forgiving about this. This is a great opportunity to talk about this phenomenon more than me being specifically bothered by it in this match. Again, I really loved this match. This was fucking awesome.
I mean, I can take your point a little easier if we talk about, for example, the Canadian Destroyer, which we saw like 4 of tonight.
Yeah, the Canadian Destroyer, for instance, looks really damaging, or it gets to the point where, if I can watch a wrestling match and I see someone take a springboard 450 Falcon Arrow and go, well, they'll probably kick out of that. That's not something I should be doing. I should be able to reasonably go, that means the match is probably over now. And then when it's not, it's a surprise.
This is not work I want to do, but I would love to see like some data on how these moves play out, who kicks out of what, how they kick out of what. Because another thing I would give to this match, for all of its big spots and kickouts, a lot of those kickouts weren't so much kicking out of the move, but
as the third man saving the match, which is different.
Yes. So that adds a layer of interest to it. And how many of the times these people bust out these weird-ass moves, is it not a move they use a lot? I'm going for a big risk here on this big move. It doesn't do as much damage because I'm not a master of this move like I am my signatures and finishers. I'm curious to see like some numbers on that, but I don't know where the fuck I'd find it, and I don't feel like doing that.
But again, this match in specific, I love. I think it was awesome. I think it was cool. I think it has some things in it which generally bother me, and this is a good opportunity to talk about them.
I don't want to just say I don't agree with you. It's not as black and white as all that. It didn't harm my suspension of disbelief here. But I have also had a broader wrestling experience historically than you have.
Indeed, yeah.
So, like, I've watched a lot of Lucha Libre garbage, and, you know, and again, I say garbage in a loving manner. If the possums weren't clear. I expect this kind of shit. I expect Rey Fenix to jump off the top of the cage and kill 3 guys with his whole body.
And, like, look, maybe I'll get used to it, because I'm certainly planning on continuing to watch AEW.
Well, and that could be it, too. We're used to such a conservative wrestling style.
Yeah, and that might be all this is. Look, I'm fully prepared to admit that this might just be me being very used to the WWE style of wrestling, and it's very conservative, protective style of wrestling, which is necessary because of the ridiculous, grueling touring pace that WWE keeps. And perhaps a style of wrestling which is kinder on the, you know, lives of the people wrestling is allowed to do more cool shit. And I'll get used to it and acclimate. And I hope that's the case. It's what prevents me from labeling this as match of the night.
I'm curious to see what you would call match of the night.
We'll get there.
Anyway, I don't want to dwell on this match for too much longer. There was a shoe full of thumbtacks.
Yeah, and again, it was very cool, full of lots of really cool spots. The Lucha Brothers went over in grand style, showing a lot of the beautiful fire and heart you want from face wrestlers. Also, their entrance was baller as fuck.
Yeah, they had a live band and they had amazing costumes. And I really liked the moment where they first brought the shoe out and Penta dives in front of Rey Fenix to save his brother from the wrath of the shoe. Like,
yeah.
What a sentence, first of all. Secondly, man, that's some good work.
It felt very genuine, but it is a shoe, so that's
a shoe full of thumbtacks.
It's a full thumbtacks.
You don't want to get hit by that.
No, I certainly don't. I'm a pussy.
We don't have a full complement of the roster for the next match. The 21-woman Casino Battle Royale for a contendership at the Women's Championship. But I had a lot of fun watching this contest. I was glad to see a lot of the athletes here.
I think it was really well done. I want to spend some time talking up the Casino Battle Royale structure for a Battle Royale.
Yeah.
I love it. I think it's great. I think it's a great way to shorten what can sometimes be a very long-winded kind of match.
I like the Royal Rumble, but there's so much time in between wrestlers entering that sometimes you get that wrestlers standing around, sitting in all 4 corners, sort of half-assedly punching each other and kind of watching the entranceway.
Just waiting for the next spot.
We haven't had that much in the last 3 Royal Rumbles, to be fair, but I also haven't been watching a lot of TV Battle Royals, so who knows.
But this, separating it into suits, it's a great gimmick. I love card gimmicks. That won't be a secret to some of you.
Welcome to All Elite Wrestling.
Yeah, I'm very happy about that. So this is, and I like that you have the one final person who gets the final slot. That's cool.
Yeah.
It still gives you that number 30 buzz without having to sit through individual things for each preceding person.
And this was the occurrence of our first surprise appearance of the night. Surprise in air quotes. Ruby Soho, previously known as Ruby Riot, as JR helpfully told us a few times.
He's old.
Hey, whatever.
He's an old man.
I believe it could have been intentional.
Just in case. Well, I mean, look. Wrestling is a work. I would believe that JR is just occasionally mentioning that in case you are a complete normal like me and go, fuck, I know her. Who was she? Damn it. It's on the tip of my tongue. Ruby Riott. I mean Ruby Soho. Yes, thank you, JR. Thank you, JR. You're like me and dumb.
She looked great. She looked like she was in a great mood. And
great new music. Great name change to go with that new music. That's just
perfect. One of Rancid's best songs. I was a little surprised she won. Like, that follows convention, and I didn't quite expect them to just follow convention.
AEW is usually more about promoting internal talent or talent who have been internalized, but they're also a lot less, from what I understand, about you got a big name in the indies, so you're going to come here and we're going to squish you and then build you up ourselves. That's what the WWE does.
Right. I was more saying that Ruby could probably get through on her own name, that she didn't need this nod, whereas someone like Thunder Rosa might have benefited from it.
I don't think Ruby's going to win the title.
Maybe not, no.
I think Ruby's going to be a nice transitional challenger, get her established, make her look strong, get her as part of the roster, and then Britt Baker beats her, and then Thunder Rosa probably wins them.
Maybe.
That's if I were telling the story, that's probably what I'd do.
Yeah. Either way, I'm happy with Ruby winning. That's fine. I would have been happy with Nyla Rose winning. I would have been happy with Jade Cargill winning.
Thunder Rosa, certainly.
Yeah. This is a really good match.
The majority of the talent, some notable exceptions, all put forth great effort. They didn't have a lot of time individually to do stuff, but what I saw was great.
Yeah. A couple of the first people in the ring were a little odd. Purple Woman, whose name I don't remember.
The one who looked like a Karen?
Yeah, a little bit. I wasn't 100% sold on her, but everybody else in the match, except for Ty Conti. I don't get the hype around Ty Conti. I don't think she wrestles very well.
I don't disagree with any of that.
I've seen her in 3 matches so far. Admittedly, this was her best one. But, good contest. Looking forward to how that continues. We next come up on Chris Jericho's final match, maybe.
You know what? Again, AEW does a great job because I bought that this might actually be a thing. Yeah. And I'm so jaded about this sort of thing, especially this gimmick in particular.
It just happened, 2 weeks ago? 3?
Yeah, we talked about this on the last WWE podcast where Roman Reigns said, if I lose, I'll leave the WWE. And we were like, no, you're fucking not. So you're winning then. This is unbelievable.
Any amount, it squashes any amount of investment that maybe Roman will lose. No, that's basically saying I'm going to win because I'm Roman Reigns.
Whereas Chris Jericho is a much better talent to utilize this particular stipulation because he's on the twilight of his career. He has other interests. As Journey of Wrestling has taught us, that makes you go part-time sooner.
He's got his whole cruise thing that's happening.
He's got a band.
The stipulation was that he couldn't wrestle in AEW.
So he could go do New Japan dates or Impact dates. And it was very clearly, specifically worded so that he could become, a manager talent in AEW, but maybe still wrestle some limited dates elsewhere in the future. And, it was all structured to make it very, very, very believable that he might lose the match. Right down to him doing a very emotional, guitar-only, cool, very stripped-down entrance where the fans got to sing the theme song for him in, a harder-than-steel sort of moment.
Yeah.
And it was he was, holding back tears during the entrance. It was shout-out to him. I don't know if that was just really being moved by how much the fans love him or genuinely him trying to sell, this is my last match. I'm gonna put as many death flags in this ground as possible. I'm 2 weeks from retirement.
Yeah.
And they did it. They bought me in. I bought that he might lose this match. And then he lost the match. Bravely.
That was, he had his leg on the ropes and Aubrey Edwards didn't catch it.
But there happened to be another ref down there who was breaking up another fight that MJF started by having his dude come and try and interfere with the match, who was then interrupted by Jake Hager. So there was another ref who happened to be down there because of the heel shenanigans, who was able to set things right. Very clean, very put together storytelling that makes it clear that it's not favoritism for Chris Jericho. It's just one event following another in sequence. Yeah. And I really liked it.
Yeah, I did too. Also, here's something I didn't notice about MJF that was pointed out to me by Ross of Cultaholic. MJF kept strutting and making weird sex motions. He was wearing red tights. He tried a top rope move that did not work. His
he was signposting that he was going to lose.
Yeah.
Like the whole time.
He was doing the Ric Flair, basically.
Because he spent the whole night mocking Ric Flair in red tights. And if you're enough of a internet smart, you can kind of get what that means.
Ric Flair, I might add, who is currently not employed by the WWE.
Ain't nothing in his contract says he has to be.
Yeah. Anyway, Chris Jericho ended up beating MJF with the walls. That was pretty cool. And he gets to stick around. He gets to be drunk on Friday nights and yell a lot.
That's another thing that I want to mention. He's fucking always hammered when he's commentating.
When he was wrestling, he was not hammered, that I could see.
No,
he was doing just fine.
But he's just completely, at least 2 sheets to the wind minimum at the start of the show. So by the end of the show, he's just a screaming, drunken madman.
And I don't hate it.
No, he's clearly having a great time.
Like, ordinarily, I'd be like, this is embarrassing. But he's so capable while he's drunk.
He's fucking hammered and still doing better commentary than all of the commentators in the WWE.
And then you pair him with Mark Henry, who's so soft-spoken and gentle. Chris Jericho is just screaming random shit, and Mark Henry says something fucking mind-blowing quietly, and you're like, God, this is amazing.
This is, and Mark Henry, the definition of a man who doesn't act hard because he doesn't need to.
No. I love his big smile before he announces the main event, like, I'm Mark Henry, and I'm here having a nice time. Anyhow, the next match, this is the one that people have been waiting for.
Yeah, this is it. He's back. Darby Allin, great talent. Cool outfit. I like the jean shorts combined with the black tights to make it look like he's wearing like impossibly skinny jeans. I love the little skeleton boy thing he's got going. I like that it looks like he's never eaten a whole food in his life. It's all good stuff. Great talent, great wrestler, but no one's here for him.
But I had to say, I mean, again, we're not a news show. CM Punk wins, lol. Which was the only result of the night that kind of surprised me.
I basically had 2 ideas. Either Darby would win here, which means CM Punk is probably only around for a very limited run of him losing to a few younger talents to put them over and put a nice little bow on his career. Or CM Punk wins, which means he's probably here for a longer, more permanent run, and he needs to, they need to reestablish him as an actual talent. And then CM Punk won, which for me is good news, because it means he's around for longer, probably.
I don't hate it, man. Darby got a rub here.
I mean, he got a huge one just for being in this, not one, for wrestling CM Punk at all, and 2, for being in this match. The first match.
Yeah. And I like Darby in general. Like, back when we tried to watch this the first time, I pointed at Darby and was like, that guy's going to be world champ eventually.
He's very cool looking.
And I've been excited to see Sting do things. Man, let me tell you something. Well, my original point was the crowd chanted for Darby after Punk won.
Yeah, and also during the match, there were some people who decided to make the Let's Go Cena Sucks chant into Darby Allin CM Punk, and I like that.
Yeah. But how surreal was it to see black and white Sting shaking CM Punk's hand?
I mean, look, as someone put, I think it was Tony Khan out here playing fantasy wrestling.
Yeah. Just sensational. The match was not the best match I've ever seen. Highly psychological.
It was CM Punk's match.
Sure.
I don't know what Darby usually does. I mean, I gather part of what he usually does is use himself like a fucking lawn dart, because he did plenty of that in this match. But this was a match that CM Punk was clearly calling. He was clearly the general here, because it's what he usually does. He wrestles methodically paced, very cerebral, storytelling-heavy wrestling matches. I love those, so I loved this. It wasn't match of the night for me either. Spoilers, I think the main event was.
Really?
Yeah.
I feel it.
But this was a really good match, and if you hadn't told me that apparently CM Punk has in secret been wrestling a couple very, very deep indie shows in a mask and being like, shh, don't tell nobody. I would have been astonished at how little ring rust he had.
Well, I mean, you got to figure usually these guys are wrestling like fake practice matches beforehand. You know what I mean?
That's not the same thing.
Right.
That's not the same thing as doing it in front of a crowd.
Right.
That's not the same thing as doing it live, no redos, no...
Yeah.
And he had so little rust, and it was fucking very cool.
I mean, even then, it's not like he's been wrestling a lot of dates, maybe 4. Like,
just to keep his hand in.
Yeah.
And again, still very impressive. But it would have been astonishing if I didn't know that.
Next up, we have some of my favorite commentary of the night. I think the other one was during the MJF match. QT Marshall, if you fancy, versus Paul White, defending the honor of Tony Schiavone, and just in general.
Tony Schiavone was the best thing about this match. This was not a good match. This was a very bad wrestling match.
I don't even know if I go that far. This was your piss break, obviously.
It was 3 minutes.
It was 3
Paul
minutes.
White just has he's like a surgically repaired hip, and he's not. He wasn't hired as a wrestler. Like, this is clearly not gonna be a 20-minute classic, guys.
But he hit his 4 moves, and it was good to see Paul White. You do a little
He
clap.
did manage. He managed to go through the whole match without doing one heel turn, which was very surprising for him.
Definitely. It was fine. It was fine.
It was what it was. It was a piss break match.
Yeah.
Big Show wins. And
Tony Schiavone doesn't give a shit.
no, Tony Schiavone is the best thing about the match because he fucking hates QT Marshall, and he's just celebrating gleefully every time Paul White hits him with a big Paul White move. Yes, do it again, Paul. Kill them, Paul. Rip their souls out. And I love it. He's clearly so good for it. He's clearly having such a good time that you have a good time. You get in, if you're at all empathetic towards this nice Tony man who's been talking to you all night. Even if you didn't give a shit about either of these two, by the end of the match, you're like, yeah, get him, Paul!
Yeah, it was just fun. And that takes us to the main event, man.
Yeah. So, as someone who doesn't do a lot of indie wrestling, doesn't watch a lot of it, isn't super into it in general, and has tried on several occasions to get into New Japan, and I just never have managed it. I don't have a lot of reasons to give a shit about Kenny Omega.
Well, and he is basically, as a wrestler, the hype backlash wrestler, right? Because everybody loves him so much that it's, shut the fuck up. I can't watch Kenny Omega, so shut the fuck up about Kenny Omega. Nobody cares.
And he's always mentioned by the same people who have talked long and loud about liking the Young Bucks, a team I know I'm not fond of. And they always basically, like, there are some crude metaphors I'm not going to use here, but they talk up Kenny Omega quite a lot on the internet. So it is, I was struggling against some hype backlash. Going into this match, even having seen him wrestle a couple times, a couple very highly rated matches I went out to go watch that were good, but nothing that rated the kind of praise I heard him getting. This match was, by all accounts, probably not his best match. This was a fine match. It was match of the night for me because I got it. I still don't think he's the best wrestler to ever lace up boots. Golden God sent forth the reincarnation of two Shawn Michaels taped together, like the internet apparently does.
Well, he's also, like, falling apart right now.
Yeah. But, like, I can see why people think that. And taking into account for the fact that he's got a lot of niggling injuries that probably aren't doing the best for him, slowing him down, making him miss steps. Even with that, I can see why people like him this much. I don't think he's ever going to be that guy for me, because I wasn't there.
It's his charisma for me that's always been the changing factor.
Yeah, and watching him on the weekly shows be this amazing, charismatic heel, which, as I understand, is how he got over in the first place.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Just being an absolute shit goblin and clearly loving it, that is one of the things that got him over for me personally. And this is match of the night for me because, one, it's just generally more solid wrestling than the Lucha Brothers match.
Oh, I would agree with that.
And
but it
also,
still had some good spots.
Yeah, it still had some good spots. Still had some big spots. And also, this was the match that made me get it. That made me get why someone would give that much of a shit about Kenny Omega.
Yeah.
And he names his moves things like one-winged angel and the V trigger. He didn't have a whole lot of road to hoe for me.
Imagine if he named it one-winged angle.
One-winged angle? Oh, okay, all right. Does the angle slam? Names it one-winged angle. Only does it once.
He would accidentally do an angle slam and go, that was one-winged angle, and give you like a wink and a nod.
There was a great moment in the match I want to highlight. He tried to jump off their little tiny reedy steel barriers, and he slipped, hit his ass, did a different move, like a different sort of springboard move off of it. Then he looked at the camera and went, let's face it, bad idea. And then went back to the match.
That's the charisma I'm talking about.
And yeah, that's good. That's why it's match of the night for me.
I respect that. I come from a place, like I said, loving Lucha Libre, loving big spots, loving hardcore matches. To me, the steel cage match was that love letter. I do want to go back to the main event here briefly. Christian Cage as a main eventer, like, is he a little underwhelming compared to guys like Kenny Omega, like Hangman Page? A little.
Christian Cage. He's very insistent terminology. He's Big Daddy Cool Diesel. He's always been upper mid-Carter, sort of written on his forehead.
Sure. And I think if he had, when he was younger, gotten more stroke in a Fed I was watching, because I sure as fuck wasn't watching whatever the fuck
TNA.
Impact was called back then, I would have believed him a little more. He's getting a little older now. Not like he's like useless right now.
I like the
clearly.
guy. He's good talent, but
But-
he's always kind of had upper mid-Carter written on his forehead for me.
Sure. However, this was a believable match.
Yeah, because he'd already beaten Kenny Omega once,
Sure.
and they mentioned that a lot.
Yeah.
And Kenny and all his people sold it like they were terrified of him the whole time.
Well, and this is another place where the undefeated streak came in.
Exactly, yeah. He's the first guy to beat Kenny Omega in 2 years. That means something. They said that one sentence the first time they introduced this on the first week I watched AEW, and I went, oh, wow, okay. So that means he's serious.
Yeah.
And no, it doesn't. He just won a match. But, it's right there. The storytelling is right there.
Well, it's the storytelling we were praising with John Cena a couple weeks ago. I don't have to be better than you.
I just have to pin you.
Yeah, I only need 3 seconds to take the title.
They mentioned that in the match.
Yeah.
I think it was JR or it might have been Tony. I couldn't tell. It was one of the more deep-voiced gentlemen, though. Said, please keep in mind that this feels a lot faster when you're in the ring. It only takes a 3-second mistake to lose.
Yeah. I really enjoyed it. And of course, like, I don't know if you guys are coming to us for news. I always say this, big fucking mistake.
That's not what we do here. We do two internet randos talk about things.
Yeah, but it bears mentioning that after the match was over, Kenny Omega made sure everyone heard his sweet Steve Urkel reference.
Which he did mid-match, and someone we were watching the show with cackled, which caused my brain to retroactively go back and listen to what he said again, and go, oh my god, that was an Urkel reference!
Did some fun teasing that's important if you have followed the Young Bucks and company for a while now. And here comes Adam Cole, baby. Fresh out of his...
freed by incompetence from hell.
And, of course, they're all friends. He came out of the heel side,
They foreshadowed it, but he came out, they did a little standoff, and then, oh, surprise, surprise, Adam Cole's friends with them. Which they did foreshadow by having him come out the heel entrance, which I like. Yeah. I like that they keep that very specific.
And then everyone did a lot of kissing, which is also what I've always wanted in my professional wrestling. And then Bryan Danielson came out.
Yeah, he did.
Dressed like a tiny Brock Lesnar.
Yeah, I noticed that immediately with the hair and he's a little tiny Brock Lesnar. AEW, we have Brock Lesnar at home. Brock Lesnar at home, much better.
Man, the force in those kicks, though. He stormed the ring and there was a big old dust up, but...
Yeah, he was stiffening dude.
Yeah. Well, no, just it looked good. Like, he was able to perform at that level. We mentioned earlier WWE has a style, a safer style of wrestling. And I guess in some interviews that have been done since, Adam Cole said, I have no problems with Vince. We had a fine conversation. this is just professionally better for me. Daniel Bryan said, I'm not mad at Vince. I think he was too protective of me, so I went elsewhere. And this shows. The man's allowed to cut loose and allowed to do shit.
Which is very cool. And maybe this will be the thing that finally gets Bryan Danielson over for me. Because I've talked a lot of times on this podcast about how I've never gotten it. I like his face run all the way back, and you can go back to those podcasts. I liked it back then. But several years of him being toxically over, so much so that no one else was allowed to get over for years because the babies wanted Daniel Bryan and they were going to throw their toys out the pram until they got him. It just soured me on the guy in a way that I was never able to fully embrace him again.
And yet now, that exact same energy I am happy for, because I want to see Vince McMahon fail. I've wanted this for a while, and I've made no secrets about it, but at this point, you've gone so far. Like,
I have no idea. There used to be at least some semblance of twisted, horrible, garbage person logic. He's gone completely fucking insane. I do not get anything that's happening.
To see a crowd in Chicago in CM Punk's first match, Chicago made Punk, after 7 years, pop harder for Bryan Danielson.
Because again, Bryan Danielson was the most toxically over individual in history.
I'll take it. Let this be the venom.
Yeah, I mean, agreed. At this point, like, I love the WWE. I do. I'm always going to be fond of it. It's where I grew up.
Sure.
But it's a shitty, awful, toxic place that's terrible to its employees and does bad wrestling. This does good wrestling. I want to be here where there's good wrestling.
I want to watch good wrestling matches and not 3 different cuck storylines running concurrently.
I don't want to be sports entertained.
I'm good with a little sports entertainment now and then, but like as a side dish. Like I'm here to eat the meat and potatoes.
Pro wrestling is an entertainment form.
Sure.
Pro wrestling is not. It's not MMA. It's not 2 men in identical shorts just punching each other for 20 minutes. It is entertainment. I love the entertainment the entertainment form that is pro wrestling. I don't want sports entertainment. I want pro wrestling, and AEW's here to give it to me.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Sometimes you get your sports entertainment. Sometimes you get your lucha libre. Sometimes you get your hardcore wrestling.
Sometimes you get your 20-minute technical, cerebral storytelling match from a guy you haven't seen wrestle in 7 years who you are unexpectedly happy to see.
But for the most part, you get wrestling.
Everything's better when nerds talk about it.
Fuck it.